big problem in Etude number 14, in Ferling 14, is breathing. I hear tons of people take a breath at the very beginning of this etude, take a breath at the rest there in the second line, and then panic from there to the end. Despite the fact that your editor, and it may be that Ferling did this himself, has marked in some breath marks. You should take those breaths, and the way to take those breaths is just come to a stop. Take your breath and then go on. This etude kind of reads like possibly a violin etude. It may be one, really. These are very old pieces and nobody really knows where they came from. But a lot of these, from the second line to the end of the piece, there's not a single rest. I encourage you to take the breaths that are marked. And the same thing's true in the slow etude. There are a bunch of breaths marked. It feels like it's silly, but take those breaths. You'll be so much happier if you do. You're much less likely to miss things if you've got good air going on. So as you approach these breaths, and you can see one in the third line of etude number 14, just pull back a little bit, take your breath, and then move on. I'll play from the rest down to the first breath. Nope, sorry, that's minor. We'll cut that. Maybe not. So just come to a stop, take your breath, and go on. There's not a judge in the country that will cut you down for that. Take your breath and go on. Second thing, there are multiple articulation patterns in this piece. You're very used to doing the kind of articulations that you do in your scales, where you just slur and then you just tongue. And here there are patterns where you got a slur 3, tongue 1, you got a slur 8, you got a slur 3, tongue 5, you got a slur tongue 1, slur 3, tongue 4. There's all kinds of patterns, and that's you. You need to go practice these patterns. Make sure that you can play each one of them with ease so that you don't get confused. Notice these changes. You know how to do this? The way to do it is to slow down a lot. Practice slowly. The slower you do this, the more repetitions that you do of this etude with exactly the right articulations and the right dynamics, the more likely you are to play it right when the time comes. Don't play too fast. It's only marked at quarter equals 112, and I think you should think of that as a maximum goal tempo. If you're playing it at around 100 and playing it perfectly, there aren't many judges who are going to mark you down much. It's pretty exciting at that tempo. Don't ruin yourself playing too fast. Okay, there is one more thing about this etude. In the last line, there are two articulation patterns and leaps that are difficult. One of them is the figure that happens in the second measure, where it's all those articulated notes, low D to C, low E to C, F sharp to C, and D to C, and then G on the downbeat. This pattern is difficult because of what you have to do with your left hand. So you're playing a low note, and then you're playing the C. This motion with your hand is not difficult. The problem is adding the octave key. So when you're going from G to C, you're having to pick these two fingers up and put your thumb down at the same time. This is the pattern that you're having to do. Try it. It's hard, trust me. So the point is, very slow practice from G to high C. And you'll find that this pattern ends up being much easier if you can do this. And again, slow practice, that's the secret. The last measure has this articulated sextuplet of a D major arpeggio. Again, nice and slow. Make sure that the sextuplet ends up being 2 triplets on either half of the beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, do, 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 go. Piece of cake. Practice slowly. Practice slowly.